It's been 200 years since the world's first railway journey.
Since then, we've had steam trains, overnight sleepers, and high-speed rail reaching 300 miles per hour. With the railway, the world opened up. Victorian families took holidays to the coast. Seasonal produce from rural farms filled urban markets within hours. People began commuting to work and suburbs sprang up around new stations. And by the early 20th century, you could board a train in London and reach Paris, Berlin, Vienna, even Constantinople. The world as we know it may not have existed without the trains. The story continues in York, a northern city that became one of the great crossroads of the railway age.
Because this is where the railways got organised.
The first trains arrived here in the 1830s, and by 1877, York had the largest station in the world.
Let's go and see if they'll let me have a look around.
From its role as headquarters of the North Eastern Railway to its place today on the East Coast Main Line, York has long been at the centre of Britain's railway story.
So welcome to York Station, what was once the biggest railway station in the world. It is still a pretty well-esteemed railway station in the UK. It is one of the largest in northern England. And in the book, Britain's Best 100 Railway Stations by Simon Jenkins, it was one of only 10 to be awarded 5 stars.
York's first temporary station opened in 1839. This was just a temporary structure, and it was never meant to be permanent. The Old York Station opened in 1841. This was set inside the city walls. This had two disadvantages. One was that it had no room to expand, and two was that the trains had to reverse when they wanted to leave York, which was not very efficient.
So in the 1860s, engineers proposed a new design with these curved railway tracks that York has actually become quite famous for. The curved railway tracks meant that there would be no need for trains to reverse out, thus shortening and improving journeys. So this station was opened in 1877. And at the time, people had never seen anything like it.
The architecture, isn't it superb? There's 3 architects really, because they either retired or died as the station was being built. So you have Thomas Prosser, Benjamin Burley, and William Bell. Prosser's design is the one that you see. Very clever. Those columns are actually drain pipes. So obviously, if you think about the roof's troughs, as you go along it, well, the rainwater goes down there and it soaks into the sewers through those. So those columns are hollow. It was built without a footbridge. It was all subways in the old days, pedestrian subways. And again, because the increase in traffic by 1900, they had to build a footbridge. They had to extend the platforms to the south.
So the engineers curved these 11 platforms into a crescent, so express trains to London, to Scotland, could glide straight through. And this iron and glass canopy is original as well. This was a really grand entrance. People hadn't seen anything like this before. Now, the reason York was so important to the British Railway is because this is where the railways got organised.
It was really because of the price of coal, because they wanted York to become, if you like, an industrial city, to make it more prosperous. Because you have to remember that, of course, York's an ancient city, but by the 1830s, it was one of the poorest. It was hit badly by the cholera, things like that. A lot of poverty. Now, they were well-meaning. They want to create more employment. Now, as you and I know, it didn't happen. So there's something in the mix that we don't really get yet that's still to be resolved, is that why the idea of getting more coal seemed to have failed, which really led to the first railway being built. In the 1870s, York was the hub of a vast railway network in the north. It's halfway between London and Edinburgh, the East Coast Main Line, and that was in no small part down to these early entrepreneurs.
Darlington had the first line, Liverpool had the first scheduled service, but York was where it really became an institution. It was home to the North Eastern Railway, which was one of the most powerful companies in the country and the only one to be headquartered here and not London. And as the beginning of the railway really is a story from the north, this was really important.
It's why it was targeted in 1942. There are maps that the Luftwaffe took before the raid, and they all mention railway station, carriage works, wagon works, principal railway lines. You see, they avoided the Minster. They were going for the railway. 1,000-kilogram bomb right in the middle of the station, quite close to where the first-class waiting room is now. Okay, where those bikes are and things like that. That was the worst bit. And if you know what to look for, you can still see the damage.
Now, behind me are the departure boards for today's trains. We don't really think very much about these days, apart from, of course, when our trains are delayed or cancelled. However, back in the 19th century, it was much more of a process. It was all done manually, and when things went wrong, it was a huge administrative headache. In a minute, we're going to go over to where this was all headquartered. But first, I'm going to make use of York's modern station amenities and get some breakfast from Pret a Manger.
As I eat my breakfast, let's go into one of the most famous and also most controversial figures of the railways in York. This is a man called George Hudson. Born in Howsham in 1800, he lost both his parents young and moved to York as a draper's apprentice. But everything changed in 1827 when he inherited a fortune. That money gave him the means to invest in new ventures, and the biggest of them all was the railway. In 1833, Hudson put up funds and became secretary of a new railway company in York. With his backing, the first lines were built, and before long he controlled routes stretching from York as far as Derby. By the mid-1840s, he was satirised in Punch magazine as the Railway King, and his empire depended on creative accounting. In 1849, angry shareholders challenged him. His figures collapsed under scrutiny, and Hudson was forced to resign from the York and North Midland and his other railway posts.
There is obviously so much to do in York outside of the railway attractions. I'm currently on the York City walls. I'm not going to go into all of this history in this video, but this does offer a really nice vantage point of the station itself. So you can see here how the station was very much a business. You can see sort of offices over there. You can see how much it expands and all the buildings surrounding the station. And these, like this building here, looks like it was built around the same time. And the station just goes on and on and on. So it's true that it was the largest in the world back in the 19th century, but it is still a big station. Now, I was hoping to be able to see how the tracks curved up here, but it's not quite high up enough. I'll see if I can find a Google Earth image that I can drop in. So obviously this station was outside the city walls, and then you've got York City here. Probably see up there, there is the Minster. And this building here, this was the headquarters of the NER Railway Services. I'm going to be really cheeky and try and see if I can get in and have a look around. But it is nowadays a 5-star hotel, so we'll see how far I get. Nowadays, this is the Grand Hotel. Like name, like nature, it is the only 5-star hotel in York. It has a spa, it has elaborate dining facilities. So let's go and see if they'll let me have a look around.
So in 1854, the railways amalgamated. So the York, Newcastle and Berwick, the York and North Midland, the Leeds Northern, all the railways around Wetherby and Hull and Leeds all became the North Eastern Railway. Hence those enormous offices as you go into the city, the huge, it's now the Grand Hotel.
Am I able to go in and get a coffee? Thanks. All right, I've been allowed in. This looks it might date back to 1906 time, but obviously a lot of it has been very much refurbished. Could I get a decaf oat cappuccino, please? Thank you. Can I ask, are the railway offices still in this building?
No.
No, it's just the hotel now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw the plaque outside and I was a bit confused.
So it was the national headquarters for the railway.
Yeah.
But obviously it's turned into a hotel now.
Sure.
It's got, if you go down that corridor, there's one of the original vaults on the wall.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have a look. So this is the 1906 lounge bar, named after the fact, I'm guessing, that the railway offices were established here in 1906. And that may well be when the building dates back to. So I think this is one of the original doors. Dates back to 1906 when the offices were here. And above the main door, it still says North Eastern Railway Head Office. And then the Grand York. And up here, we've got a really hard to read sign, but it says, "The British Railway Board hereby give notice that this way is not dedicated to the public." That seems a bit threatening.
Just down the road is the site of York's first railway station.
So the first railway station in York was established in 1938, but it was just a temporary structure. It was never meant to be permanent.
In 1839, they got permission to demolish part of the city wall to make an arch through the wall so the railway could go inside the city walls.
This is where it was, so we are very much within the city walls, and there were train tracks and a station that would run along here. So I think it was this building here that was part of the old York station. Nowadays it's known as West Offices, and it's won the Key Publishing Modern Railways Restoration Award. So this is now a Grade 2 listed building. So after the temporary station was disused, this station served York between 1841 and 1877. This is when the new station, which is still used today, was built. It was ultimately closed because use of the railway grew so rapidly. The station within the city walls was really not ideal. It meant the trains had to come into the station, stop, and because it was so small, go the other way, backwards. So because of its size and design flaws, it was never going to be York's permanent station.
The Great North of England Railway wanted to build a railway from York up to Darlington. That's the next link in the chain, and that started around 1841. In 1845, Hudson wanted to promote a railway to Scarborough, and of course that was built, as you're aware. It's still the same route today to Scarborough, and that opened in 1845. But of course that little station inside the walls was clearly becoming too busy. It's a terminus.
So in the 1870s, they built what they decided was going to be a much bigger station, aka the biggest station in the world. So the North Eastern Railway was one of the most powerful railway companies in Britain. By the early 1900s, it managed over 1,700 miles of track, transported millions of passengers a year, and employed tens of thousands of people. This is why York has always been such a pivotal place for the railway. And it is also why today it is home to the National Railway Museum. So this museum is right behind York Station, and it's home to some of the most iconic locomotives and railway carriages in Britain's history.
My name is Tom Payton. I'm an exhibition engagement volunteer here at the National Railway Museum. And behind me is my favourite locomotive, Mallard. Unbelievably, that when it was built, it was pushed out of the factory at Doncaster, and 11 weeks later it broke the world land speed record for steam locomotives, and it holds it to this day, 126.3 miles per hour.
York sat right at the heart of Mallard's story. The East Coast Main Line ran straight through the city, making it a key stop on the express services these A4 engines hauled between London and Edinburgh. Today, York is where you can still see Mallard up close.
His main job wasn't to break records. They built quite a few steam engines to this design, and their job was to put express trains between London and Edinburgh, like the Azuma trains today. That's what they do. And they carried on doing that till 1963, when they decided that there were better ways of putting trains. So the big crew of two, the driver would sit there normally, and all the controls he needs are very handy for him to get at. The fireman, meanwhile, will be on his feet. That 9 tons of coal when they set off from King's Cross in that space, and all had to be shoveled in there, because all that in there was burning coal. So not good working conditions. Very dirty in here, with coal dust. They could apparently, apart from the tea which they could make on that shelf, they apparently used to cook bacon and eggs on the shovel. So we'd have a nice breakfast of bacon, eggs and coal dust.
And where did you say they went? It was
London to Edinburgh.
London to Edinburgh.
They could do it non-stop.
And how long would it take to Edinburgh?
6.5 hours. Normally change crews at York. So they would probably do a shift of about 3.5 hours. Then they'd probably get a break, and then they would take the train back. When they ran the non-stop trains, they didn't use this tender. They had another one with a corridor down because they still had to change crews. It was too long to work, 6.5 hours. So a highly skilled job, you know, keeping the fire going, you know, so they build it up when there's a hill coming, you know, let it die down a bit when they're coming into a station.
Yeah, were there many injuries?
Yeah, to be a driver, you normally have to be a fireman first. A lot of firemen, you know, they didn't do themselves with that, but just as the amount of hard work they were doing. If anyone ever says to you hard work never killed anyone, it's not true.
Now, it's fair to say that a lot of countries have taken over when it comes to railway innovation. This is the model of the Maglev Railway, which is the fastest railway in the world.
Maglev trains use magnets to float above the track, removing friction. In Shanghai, one runs from the city to the airport at over 600 kilometers per hour.
So it really isn't just the railway history for York. Being where it is in the country, it's a northern heartland, and it's somewhere that may hold the future of the railway. And I think this museum and other exhibits throughout the country have a real great impetus to hopefully help the country fall back in love with railway travel. So the Railway Museum is currently having some work done to it, but this will all be opening in time for the 27th of September, which is the official 200-year anniversary of the railway. Now, underneath here, this is the bridge, a pedestrian bridge that leads underneath the station, and we'll get back out to the other side. So this railway bridge leads underneath all 11 tracks at York.
It was great to see the railway being celebrated at the National Railway Museum, but as I walked back over to York Station, I couldn't help but think that this railway city is not as railway heavy as it used to be.
After World War II, passenger traffic dwindled, so economies were made. It was the beach enclosures. The beach enclosures really decimated, by a factor of 10 the amount of passenger traffic, which is why the station, the platforms were reduced and reduced and reduced. So by 1989, when electrification came, the East Coast Main Line, it was cheaper to electrify fewer platforms, which is why there's so many trackless ones now. So before 89, there were still 16 platforms. After 89, 11.
Unlike Crewe, Swindon and even Darlington, York had grown before the railway. But there's no denying the amount of business and, very importantly, the amount of tourism that the railways brought. York is another destination that's history is intrinsically connected to the rails. And I hope that in many years to come, people will still be able to board a train here and reach all corners of the country. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Next time we're going to be in Crewe and I hope to see you then.
Crewe was a town that was built entirely around the railways.
So this in box used to be in Crewe Station.
If you just stand here for a few minutes, you will see trains from every corner of the country. Will we get our delay repay? None other than Queen Victoria. She actually stayed here quite a few times when she was journeying from London to Scotland by train. It will forever be a place that has its roots on the railway.